So, dear students, welcome to your chemistry class. I'm very happy that I've got one more opportunity to be your teacher once again. And this time I will be teaching you physical chemistry. See, in your chemistry, you have three different sections. One is physical chemistry, in which you will be studying about more of the physical properties, and you will have many numerical problems to do, so which you always have enjoyed. Okay, mole concepts such and likewise those things. And you will be studying inorganic chemistry and organic chemistry. So we have three sections: physical chemistry, organic chemistry and inorganic chemistry, and I will be teaching you physical chemistry. So this is the first chapter in physical chemistry. This is study about atoms. Okay, so let us see first. It starts with John Dalton's atomic theory, which you are so familiar with. So what are the postulates of this theory? That elements are made of extremely small particles called atoms. Okay, so atoms are the smallest particles. That is what Dalton's theory said. Then atoms of given elements are identical in size, mass and other properties. So if the element is same, then atoms will also be same, and if the element is different, then atoms will also have different size, different mass, different properties. So that is what he said. Then he said that atoms cannot be subdivided, it cannot be created, nor it can be destroyed. Atoms of different elements combine in simple whole number ratios to form chemical compounds. So two atoms can combine together in very simple ratio, 1:2, 2:1, like that, very simple ratios. Then in chemical reactions, atoms are combined, separates or rearranged. So there is only a separation or rearrangement which takes place. So there is no other big change that is happening when chemical reactions takes place. Okay, because he was not aware of the nuclear changes and also he said just what is happening in a chemical reaction, the atoms are combining, they are separating or they are just rearranging themselves. So these are the main postulates of Dalton's atomic theory. Now there are some limitations. So we will just discuss what were the limitations of this theory. Okay, first, it does not account for subatomic particles, because Dalton's atomic theory had said that atoms are indivisible, they cannot be divided, but we now know that there are some subatomic particles such as proton, electron, neutron. Okay, so the discovery of these particles, it disproved this postulate. So this said that he is not exactly correct. But anyway, we always have to appreciate the effort taken by the initial scientists who find out some big theory, isn't it? Because the amount of effort that they put in finding out these things. Later on, with the advancement of science, we may come to new things, but we cannot forget the contribution of the people, the original contributions, isn't it? So we respect Dalton for his theory. Then it does not account for isotopes. So as per Dalton's atomic theory, all atoms of an element have identical masses and densities. So we know that Dalton said that if elements are same, then their masses will be same. But later on, after the discovery of isotopes, we know carbon 12, carbon 14. Although both are carbon, but one has mass 12 and one has 14. Okay, so that means the same element can have different masses. So that is how this theory was disputed. Even for hydrogen also, we know that there are three isotopes of hydrogen which have different atomic masses, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, so that is how this theory was disputed. So this is one limitation. Then elements need not combine in simple whole number ratios. In certain compounds, organic, they do not have simple ratios, like we have C12H22O11. That is a formula for sucrose, which is not a very simple formula, isn't it? Because carbon, hydrogen and oxygen are combining in 11:22:11, this ratio. Okay, so he said that they are not so simple, the chemical reactions do not happen so simply as it was stated by Dalton's theory. Then the theory does not account for allotropes. So we know that allotropic forms, one same element can exist in two different forms, like you have carbon, allotropes of carbon can exist in two allotropic forms. They are diamond and graphite, and also fullerene is there. So you see that Dalton said that if elements are same, then they will have the same properties. But even the same elements can also exist in different physical forms, and they can have different properties. We know that diamond and graphite have so much variation in their properties. So this also could not be explained by Dalton's atomic theory. Now limitations I have just put in bullet points. It does not explain the cause of chemical combination. So the Dalton theory is not able to explain why elements combine. You know that later on when we study, we understood that it was because of the filling up of the valence shell, isn't it? The need for getting a complete octet or duplet. That is why the chemical combination happens, isn't it? So it was later on, after the discovery of electrons, that we understood why atoms they combine together. Okay, so Dalton was not able to explain because this was not discovered at that time. So this is the first point. Then it fails to explain the idea of isobars and isotopes. We have discussed isotopes are same elements having different masses, isn't it? And what are isobars? They are different elements having the same masses. So he could not explain these things. Then it failed to explain the law of gaseous volume. So we have studied Gay-Lussac's law and all later on, isn't it? So he could not explain the law of gaseous volumes. And it could not explain the nature of binding force between atoms and molecules. So what is the force that holds atoms together in the form of molecules? That also Dalton could not explain. But anyway, he was a pioneer and he started with his atomic theory. So we congratulate and appreciate his work. Okay. Now we come to the main part, laws of chemical combination. So we have to study here 5 laws of chemical combination. So there are 5 basic laws of chemical combination that govern the chemical combination of elements. Okay. So first is law of conservation of mass. Second one is law of definite proportion. Third, law of multiple proportion. Fourth, Gay-Lussac's law of gaseous volume. And fifth, Avogadro's law. So you have to first get familiarized with these laws. You have to learn the names of these 5 basic laws that we are going to learn. And today I will be discussing the law of conservation of mass. Okay. So whenever you have classes, a good chunk of the topic will be covered, and you have to really work hard on it. Otherwise we will not be able to finish the portions. So be very careful and finish your work on time. So today we will be discussing about the law of conservation of mass. So law of conservation of mass, you have already studied that mass is neither created nor destroyed. In ordinary chemical and physical changes. So when there are any physical and chemical changes, the masses are not created or destroyed. Like here you have log, a piece of log. What is the weight of the log? 30 kg. And we have fire. The mass of the fire is 1 kg. So when both of them combine, that means 31 kg is combining together. And now you have ashes. Some ash is formed from the log of wood, and some smoke is also formed. So just take the weight of these two things, 28 kg and 3. So again you have 31. So that means it starts and ends with the same amount. So no mass is lost. That is what this says. That mass is not lost because mass cannot be created. If you say that 31 kg reacted and 35 kg is the product, that means 4 kg has been generated during the reaction. That means mass is created, isn't it? And if you have 31 kg and in the end product you only have 30 kg, that means we will say 1 kg is lost. So that will be against the law of conservation of mass, because it says that mass cannot be created, mass cannot be destroyed. But we know that there is a limitation for this law, because we have studied. Do you remember what we studied in the last chapter of physics in your 10th standard? We studied about nuclear reaction, and you know that when we take a nuclear reaction, always the mass of the reactant is more than the mass of the product. There is some loss in mass, isn't it? Where does that mass go? that is converted into energy according to Einstein's mass energy relationship, isn't it? E is equal to mc square. So this is a limitation that in nuclear reaction we cannot apply this law of conservation of mass. So this is very simple. Law of conservation of mass, it states that the matter cannot be created nor be destroyed. Remember who put forth this theory? Antoine Lavoisier in 1789. He was the one who put forth this theory. For any chemical change, total mass of active reactants are always equal to the mass of the product formed. So this is the law of conservation of mass, and it is derived from Dalton's atomic theory that atoms can neither be created nor be destroyed. So mass can also not be created nor be destroyed. So in this you have to just see the total mass of reactants is always equal to the total mass of products, plus if there is any unreacted remaining reactants, then you have to add that mass also. Okay, so this is very simple mathematics where you have to balance the two sides of an equation. You have to balance the mass on either side of the equation. So this is an experimental verification of the law of conservation of mass. Very simple experiment. It was done by a scientist called Landolt. So he took a solution of sodium chloride and silver nitrate separately in two tubes of H shape. Okay, so we are taking sodium chloride and silver nitrate, and you know the reaction AgNO3 plus NaCl will give AgCl plus NaNO3. So there will be a white precipitate of silver chloride and sodium nitrate will be formed. Okay, so what happens? First you are taking them into separate tubes, NaCl and AgNO3, and then you weigh this tube. So you will find out this weight of this tube. Suppose it is x kg. Okay, the weight of this whole tube is x kg when the reaction has not started. Now what you will do, you will shake this so that some NaCl goes this side, AgNO3 comes this side, and then you will let the complete reaction happen. After the complete reaction takes place, again what you will do, you will weigh the content of this tube, and you will find that whatever was the weight, initial weight, it will be the same as the final weight. So there is no loss of mass in the reaction. So this is a very simple experiment to prove the law of conservation of mass. Okay, then we have to do some simple problems. You see here, the problem is 5.2 grams of calcium carbonate when heated produced 1.99 gram of carbon dioxide. So you know that when calcium carbonate is heated, it gives CaO plus CO2, isn't it? So when you are taking 5.2 grams, how much carbon dioxide you are getting? 1.99 gram of carbon dioxide, and calcium oxide is left. And what is the weight of that? It is 3.2 grams. So calcium oxide is how much? 3.2 grams. Okay. Show that these results illustrate the law of conservation of mass. So very simple. What is the weight of calcium carbonate? 5.2 grams. What is the total weight of the product? That is CaO and CO2. That is 3.20 plus 1.99. So you again get 5.19 gram. Okay. So here it was 5.2 gram on the left side of the equation and 5.19 gram on the right side. So it is just a mass loss of how much? 0.01 gram. So whenever you are doing some experiments, sometimes some error happens. Okay, so some slight error may happen. That is why you keep on repeating the experiment either 3 times or 5 times, so that the errors are all minimized. Okay, so here we can say there might be some error, 0.01. So that means we can just assume that the law of conservation of mass holds good within experimental error. So you will be learning how much error is permissible when you do your chapter in physics, okay, about errors in measurement. Now problem for practice, one more problem is there. In an experiment, 14 gram of sodium bicarbonate was allowed to react with 10 gram of acetic acid. So there is a reaction where an acid is reacting with a bicarbonate. So you know that you get salt and you get carbon dioxide, isn't it? Salt and water and carbon dioxide. So here after the reaction is completed, it was found that 16.67 gram of the solution was left. So solution means the salt and water is how much? 16.67, and a gas went out from the container. What was the mass of the gas that escaped into the atmosphere? So you have to find how much carbon dioxide has escaped out. Okay, name the law applied. So let the mass of the carbon dioxide be x gram. Now on the reactant side you have 14 gram of sodium bicarbonate and 10 gram of acetic acid. So just you will add 14 plus 10, that is for the reactant. And in product side you have 16.67 gram of the solution. So you will say 14 plus 10 should be equal to 16.67 plus x. So you know how to find out x. X is 7.33 gram. So it is based on the law of conservation of mass. So very simple. Now I have given you the scanned copies of 10 pages of 10 to 12 pages of your chemistry book. So at the end there is an exercise. I think you can do the first problem, which is based on the law of conservation of mass. If you have any doubts, please be free. You can ask any time. Okay, if you have not understood any point, you clarify it so that we can go very smoothly. Okay, you will have a smooth sail through this 11th standard. It is not difficult. If you are able to understand the concepts, you will love it. Okay, so I hope you will start enjoying this chemistry portion.